the hench versus riding for the hill, a majority of Americans are once again opposed to nuclear energy. This statistic is important because for a long time before this, in the 30 years preceding, Americans were largely in favor of using nuclear energy to power. However, in direct contrast, the United States is currently experiencing rapid growth in this field, with 24 applications for new reactors since just 2007. Almost 20% of our energy today, according to the article Nuclear Power in the USA from October of 2017, comes from nuclear plants. Though there is a lot of confliction about the costs and the benefits of nuclear energy, I believe that nuclear power is an important next step for our country. The United States should expand its reliance on nuclear energy as a more favorable and sustainable alternative to oil and other fossil fuels. There are two important facts explaining our need for energy sources with lower emissions and our collective distrust of nuclear energy. First, we currently rely too much on unsustainable resources. According to Current and Future Energy Sources of the USA, published by Penn State after 2015, in 2012, 81% of our energy came from oil, natural gas, or coal. And while renewable energy is on a rise, so is the use of petroleum and natural gas. Switching to renewable is slowly happening in the United States and elsewhere in the world, but it's simply not happening fast enough. Petroleum is visible in every sector of our energy production, from our electric power to our residential and commercial use, from industrial use to our transportation. By comparison, in 2015, renewable energy was just most heavily used in our electric power sector. Secondly, there's a large stigma around the use of nuclear energy. This is in large part due to the Chernobyl disaster. In 1986, an explosion and fire sent radiation into the atmosphere in the Ukraine. But according to the Learning Network on the New York Times in 2012, this was all because of human judgment and error during a simulation of a disaster situation. 25 years later, the stigma was largely disappearing and nuclear energy was becoming accepted as a viable source of energy. However, on March 11, in 2011, an earthquake hit the Fukushima reactor in Japan. There was a huge media response with headlines that encouraged fear, like levels of radiation at Fukushima unimaginable, and the Fukushima incident is out of control. In reality, immediate effects were slight at best. Just 10 out of 5,000 people tested showed any high levels of radiation in their system. The situation was immediately handled well by the Japanese government. The people that needed to be evacuated were, and it was effectively contained in the moment. Now, according to a Gallup poll in a 2016 article by Rifkin, Americans are more opposed to using nuclear energy than they have been since 1994. Nuclear disasters loom too large, according to a Pacific Standard Staff 2016 article. The effects of nuclear disasters are usually blown out of proportion and often create images similar to those of nuclear bombings in people's minds. The frequency is often also distorted in people's minds, and in fact, only 5 major accidents have happened in the last 70 years, which is a great track record, considering that there are 440 active reactors worldwide today, according to Plans for New Reactors Worldwide, published by the World Nuclear Association in 2017. After understanding the need for new and better sustainable and low-emission sources of energy, as well as the current stigma around nuclear energy, the only question remaining is whether nuclear power is really the best solution. A letter quoted in an article by Pew Yu, published in ZMZ Science in November of 2016, describes our situation as this. Society isn't doing enough to rein in emissions. Many have lobbied against nuclear energy in the past because of associated stigmas, but on a basis of cost, safety, emissions reduction, land use, and pollution, nuclear power definitely has a place in our future. Nuclear energy is much more reliable than the 2 fastest growing renewable energy sources. Solar and wind power only work when there's sunlight and wind, but nuclear produces for 90% of the time that the reactor is in use. Advances are quickly being made in solar and wind energy, but as of now, the nuclear is really needed to realistically bridge the gap. Solar and wind energy also takes huge amounts of land to create, while nuclear power can be created at a station that's just the size of a sports stadium. Nuclear energy is non-renewable, but it is also no emission. The emissions from mining and transporting the materials needed to create the energy are much lower than the alternative fossil fuel sources. Research is occurring to one day make it a renewable resource and to cut down and limit the waste by reprocessing the waste from the reactions into energy. According to What is Nuclear Energy, published on May 13, 2017, nuclear energy is a stable and competitive cost as opposed to the high volatility of oil costs. Though it's not yet the perfect solution to our energy crisis, nuclear power is a much better source of fuel than fossil fuels. Nuclear power feeds into the electric power sector, which helps to shift our society to an electricity-centric mindset, which makes it more sustainable to, for example, own an electric vehicle. It's a very cost-effective and efficient way to help wean America off of high-emissions energy sources. In conclusion, a shift towards nuclear energy should be our country's next step in averting our current energy crisis. Our country is currently much too reliant on non-sustainable resources with high emissions like oil, coal, and natural gas. We need to forget the historic stigma and the gross exaggerations in accordance with using nuclear power and instead focus on the real and present benefits. Nuclear energy is simply better for our planet than using fossil fuels. In fact, one NASA study written by Korecha and Hansen in 2013 predicted that based on our current projected increase in the use of nuclear energy, between 4.4 and 7 million deaths will be prevented worldwide, which would have been directly or indirectly caused by the continued usage of fossil fuels. If we accept nuclear power as a favorable next step for moving away from oil, coal, and natural gas, our planet will benefit immensely and we will be one step closer to creating a more sustainable Earth. Thank you.
Any questions or comments?
We're waiting outside.
Did you hand this to Sarah? That was from, you left right after, so.